He's saying inflation's been rising since 2021, but why has the Fed been so slow to kind of put a tamper on it?
It was transitory, didn't you hear?
The Fed has been so slow because the Fed needs inflation, but they can't publicly say it. When you have debt that's bigger than your economy, when you have more debt than the size of your economy, you need inflation to raise up the number of the economy. You need to artificially increase the economic activity in the economy through inflation so that it's larger than your debt. Right now, the debt's larger than the GDP, larger than the economy. It's wrong. It's backwards. So they actually need inflation, but they can't just come out and say it.
But in a debt-based system, aren't they always going to have more debt than the size of the economy?
Yeah,
so,
correct.
So they're just trying to devalue the dollars to pay that debt.
Our work here is done.
Yes.
Yeah. They have to. You know why? Because our money, the way our money isn't money. Our money is more like credit units. It's almost like you went to the bank, Anthony, and whatever money is in your bank right now is just a representation of credit. It's like, hey, this guy's worth this much credit. Let's put these credit units in his account. But those credit units, when they were created, they come with interest. All money comes with interest in this system. So you need more and more and more credit units, or what we call dollars, to pay it all back. So you need inflation. Like, inflation is mandatory. It's by design. But the central banks can't come out and say that. So they just say 2% inflation is about healthy. But when the debt is so big, they need more than 2% inflation. And a lot of people are now debating, saying, hey, our central bank's going to come out and say, well, you know what? We were wrong on 2% inflation. We actually need 4% inflation. 4% is the quote unquote healthy new normal for an economy. And what that does is just destroy anybody's savings who's not investing. So it turns Keith and Anthony and Nick and myself and all of us sitting here into investors because your money is just losing value at, like they say, 4%, but likely more. Mm-hmm. We don't have money. We have credit. We're in a credit system. And the dollars that are in your pocket, in your bank account, they are units of credit, but we call it money.
Ultimately owed to the banks, commercial banks, or central bank?
Central banks first, but then when the central bank, listen, if you just reverse time to the start of the system, the first $100 that needs to come into existence, the government goes to the central bank. Why they would is anyone's guess. If you and I started a country, if we conquered a piece of land and said, Anthony, you and I now are the owners of this piece of land and we're a country, and we call that country, what would we call it?
Brampton 2.0.
No. Yeah, you're born in Brampton? Yeah. Brampton 2.0. Okay, we called the country Brampton.
I want my own Brampton.
Okay, we started Brampton 2.0 as a country. If we came up with the money for that country, why would we go to a third party, a central bank, and say, hey, can you give us the money to start our country? We would have a treasury and we would just start the money for our country. Mm-hmm. Why would we go to a central bank? We wouldn't. But okay, we can argue why that happens later. Now, the system we're in, we go to a central bank. So the country goes to Brampton 2.0, goes to the central bank and says, hey, we need $100 because we got to start an economy here. And the central bank says, here's the $100. You owe it back to us with interest.
Yeah.
And then me and you as the government would go to a bank in Brampton 2.0 and we would deposit the $100 in the bank. Now the bank has $100 to lend out. And so when you go to borrow to build a house in Brampton 2.0, you go to that bank, borrow the $100, and the bank says, well, you owe me that money back with interest. But remember, there's only $100 in the system. We only started with 100. Where does the $2 or $4 of interest payments come from? It only can come by more borrowing. It doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. And when the bank lends out, once you deposit that $100 into the bank can lend out $1,000.
So there's always
$900.
So there's always more debt than money.
So it keeps just generating.
Well, just think about this. That just what Nick said. If you take that $900 that the bank lent out and deposit at another bank, now that bank can lend out more money than it has on deposit.
Yeah.
So there's just always more debt than actual currency or credit units. So you always need more credit units.
They can lend out thousands.
Yeah.
The whole thing is just a game. It's just a ridiculous game. And it's why no one can get ahead and everyone looks around and saying, well, why can't I really get ahead? Why in the 1970s did you only need one person in a family working and you could have a middle-class life?
Yeah,
but now with two, you can barely have a middle-class life. Yeah, you need three people working.
Yeah.
It's because of the money.
Multi-family households.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was kind of joking, kind of, for the next couple of years. At least.
Ass backwards.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see Arvin, you're saying it comes from the value created by those dollars. But if there's no extra dollars in the system, if there's only a $100 in the system in entirety, even if I create value, where does the extra $2 to pay for my value come from?
Yeah, the value makes sense.
It must be that makes sense.
Yeah, we agree with the value.
We agree. But to pay for the value, to get the extra $2, you must borrow more. Now, it might not feel like it because you're like, well, I'm just going into my bank account and paying for that service.
Well, someone's borrowed.
But if you rewind those dollars long enough, someone borrowed that money into existence.
Yeah. Jeez.